East Coast of the United States, I have no idea what time it is down and under, but it is time for Shiny Side Out with Dave and Mecky. So I hope you have your tinfoil hat all made and cinched down tight over your ears. So take it away, Dave and Mecky.
Welcome to Shiny Side Out with Dave
and Mecky
on WZZR, broadcasting from Australia for Revolution Radio on Freedom Slipstack. That's right, freedomslips.com, where it's more than just radio, so jump into the chat room if you can. This is show number 256, and we're talking about ancient technology. You know, Freedom Slips is on air, online, and on your smart device, so grab an app to listen to it anywhere or listen at home on a Grace Tabletop Digital Radio. If you missed it, Solaris's show with Ra Castaldo, they were talking about Italian witchcraft, spirituality, political observations, and more. It was a great show, I have to tell you.
And I listened to about half of it, and I liked it.
Yeah.
So there. Go smoke that.
But you know, it only cost $5. $5 in Australia. That's like a coffee, right? The cost of one coffee a month to access the Freedom Slips archive. So get in there and check out her shows and our shows too, or anyone else for that matter who has a show on Revolution Radio. That's all it costs. And before we continue, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where I live, the Dark and Young people, and pay respect to elders past, present, and future. And one day, Maggie's going to find out the name of the people in the place where he lives. Maggie.
You know, I have had to look at it.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that anybody actually was here. So let me keep digging, all right?
Well, it's going to be a Darkin people, Darkin. And if anyone out there thinks that I'm saying dark and young, I'm not. It's Darkin, and you could say Jung because it's spelt Jung, but it isn't. It's pronounced Jung, and that's the people who lived where I am, and it was sort of like the main thoroughfare of travel up and down the coast, and so their language developed as languages do, with contact of many people. So, Mackie,
I would like to acknowledge the Daruk Nation.
Daruk.
The Daruk Nation.
Nice.
Thank you.
There you go. See, that's easy. We can put that in the show notes. Mackie was Googling like a champion just then.
Yeah, like the Dickens.
So, for those people on YouTube, I've just cranked up the webcam, and we should be right now. There we go. Awesome. Sorry about that, Mecky. We were both offline video-wise, but there we go. So, this is show number 256.
650 and 200.
Part 8. Of how many? We don't know yet, but we'll get to that. What an exciting week it's been, Mecky.
Exciting is one word. I agree. Now, let me tell you about this week. First of all, it's hot.
Oh,
Here
it's hot.
In my neck of the woods, and Dave will tell you about his neck of the woods. Right now, right now it's probably a bit cooler, but earlier, about 1 p.m., 2 p.m. in the afternoon, I went to the gym. I went for a walk, and the temperature outside was 44 degrees centigrade. That's about 120. I don't know. Is it about 115 Fahrenheit,
I'll
Dave?
do it.
Not
What,
too sure,
you
but
said
it's
44
hot.
point what?
It's hot, 44 degrees. I think it's
44.
about 115 Fahrenheit, right?
Yeah, I'll get to that in a second. Continue your
cool.
story.
So that's hot. It's hot. Yeah, so it's getting hot. And we had a lot of news this week, and I need to start with one item.
111.2.
Say again?
111.2 degrees Fahrenheit.
111.2. That's how hot it was here this afternoon, my friends. Right now, it's probably dropped down to maybe 105, something like that. But the point is, though, dropped to 105.
Yeah, a nice, calm Peaceful 105 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's what it is. It
delicious.
isn't that much cooler where Dave is. But look, everybody this week has been talking about this deal that Donald Trump may or may not back out of. I need to give everybody a bit of background here. So this is around the asylum seekers that we do not wish to process on Australian territorial soil. So boat people, as they are called, because they come by boat for the most part, are intercepted and
In international waters, by the way.
in international waters, and then rerouted to some other island. Nauru is one at the moment. The Christmas Island is another.
Manus Island.
But the point is, we don't want them in Australia. That's the policy of the government. It's the policy of the previous government. Because once they're here, once you're on Australian soil, you've got all kinds of rights. Right. So we want to avoid that. Not me, the Australian government.
That's right.
So now this is now more than 1,000 people, including children, families, and people have died there as well. And it's not awesome. It's not a good place. It's like a prison. Right? It's not a prison, but it's like a prison. It's just a holding facility, and it's just bleak. And a lot of Australians believe, well, we should just get these people in. Now, there's two sides, of course, again to this argument. One, we want to discourage the boats. Why? Because a lot of people die as they cross. Now, people think, oh, it's not that far. No, but it's treacherous. These are treacherous waters. It's Southeast Asia, and in fact, the straits that connect Australia and Indonesia are not easy to navigate. A lot of boats sink, and they're usually substandard boats. So people do die. So I understand why people want to stop the boat people.
Now,
however,
the substandard boat thing is because people are trying to make money from those desperate people, and they'll charge them thousands of dollars to get some old fishing boat, which is barely seaworthy, and take them 3,000 kilometers.
Yes, that's exactly right. So it costs a lot of money to make that trip. So now, having said that, though, but once the people are on the boat, my opinion is, well, let's just get them in, and let them let them be in Australia. But no, the governments, both Liberal and the Labour government, which are the Conservatives and I guess and the Democrats and Republicans in America, think of it like that. They don't want that, and again, I understand why, to some extent, right? They're unvetted and all that. I mean, it's a drop in the ocean, 1,000 people. If you really look at the total numbers of refugees, it's a drop in the ocean, but we're still pretty hard about it. So we have to get them somewhere. So we had a deal with Malaysia that fell through. We had a deal with Papua New Guinea that didn't go anywhere. And so essentially anywhere but here is the answer. And it seems that President Obama agreed to take those guys on. Now that's really a nice thing to do, right? Now, why would America do that? I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't see anything, worthwhile in it for the States. But if they want to help someone, so be it. Now, I do understand why Donald Trump does not want to take them, or not necessarily want to take them, or wants to really vet them. Have some, high level vetting happening there. I get that, because ultimately, and I need to remind everybody here, this is our problem. This is an Australian problem. This is not Donald Trump's problem. It's not Obama's problem. It's not America's problem, right? Like I said, the deal with Malaysia fell through. The deal with Papua New Guinea fell through. And maybe now the deal with the US is going to fall through. So this is not unprecedented. The only reason it gets so much airtime is because it's Donald Trump.
That's right.
Okay? But he's not out of line, in my opinion, because he has to think about America. I mean, we got 1,000 people. Why are we taking them in? I would ask the same question. And ultimately, it is an Australian problem, guys. It really is.
It is. Look, I have something to add to that. There is a Geneva Convention for Human Rights. And one of those things, if you have begun a conflict in a country, that's your country's responsible for the conflict and for the refugees. That's just the way that is. I'm sorry. But according to Article 1 of the Geneva Convention, a protocol relating to the states of refugees, a refugee is a person who, and I'm going to read this out to you, so think about this, owing to well-founded fear of being persecuted for reasons of race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group or political opinion, is outside the country of his nationality and is unable or, owing to their such fear, unwilling to avail themselves, it says himself, of the protection of that country, or who, not having a nationality and being outside of the country of his former habitual residence, as a result of such events, is unable or owing to such fear, unwilling to return to it. We're not talking about people who just go, you know what, hey, Mecki, why don't we go, I want to go somewhere else. I want to live, I don't know, in Tanzania. Right?
Me too. I want to go to Tanzania first. Me.
So we pack our bags, discard all of our documentation, and decide to try and get there somehow. We don't fall into a status of refugee in that case. So fleeing persecution is one thing, but also there are other articles in regards to accepting or not accepting refugees. And it says, with regard to refusing entry and sending people back, the law is also clear. This is article number 33 of the Geneva Convention and Protocol relating to status. And that is, no contracting state, that means no member of the UN who have signed on to this agreement, shall repel or return any refugee in any manner whatsoever to the frontiers of territories where his life or freedom would be threatened on account of race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group or political opinion. The reason, Mecki, I'll tell you why that these people, these asylum seekers, people seeking asylum in Australia, aren't allowed to step foot onto Australian soil is a legal reason the government wants to avoid. And that reason is, once they're on Australian soil, there is a queue of lawyers willing to act on their behalf and fight for these clauses to allow them to be accepted into this country. Now, that makes perfect sense to me, that they should be allowed these without argument. However, this is my opinion, I believe our government painted themselves into a corner with public opinion to ban anyone coming here of their own accord. That's it.
Yep.
That's all that's happened. And now, because of that, we're faced with, and they've said, no one's arrived here, claiming once again more public opinion on it. And it's, they like it. The government likes the fact that they can tout these figures and say, no one's arrived here. But why are we trying? My question is, why are we trying to give away 1,000 people to the US when we don't want them? That's the big question. Exactly.
And we should not be, my point really was, let's not be hard on Trump here, because he didn't start any of this. This is not
it's not his
mess
battle.
of his doing,
Exactly.
So,
it's not his battle.
Exactly. So, and thanks, Dave, and thank you for the legal clarifications as well. So, there's always more to a story than we, led to believe. And I'm sure there's more than Dave and I have disclosed here. We have neither the time nor at this point the interest to go any further. However, there's a couple of things I did want to share with you guys. One, last week in our Ancient Text series, we made reference to the University of Chandigarh, and to a lady called Dr. Ruth Rayner.
With
reference
I remember that.
to some
yes.
recently discovered documents in Sanskrit that talk about... Sorry?
I remember that last week, yes.
That's it. Yeah, sorry. When I shout into the microphone like this, it's hard for me to hear anyone except for myself. My apologies. So, anyway, so we had a lot of, I went to a lot of chat rooms, I did a bit of more research, and because people said, there's no such place, University of Chandigarh, and Dr. Ruth Rayner does not exist. Well, wrong on both counts. The book, in fact, that we referred to, a book that she wrote, was published in 1982. It's called Fascinating Original Manuscript Journal of Sayings, Quotes, Memories, and Diary of a Noted Historian, Spiritualist, and Sanskrit Scholar, Dr. Ruth Rayner. Yeah, PhD. Boom. And not only that, she did teach at the University of Chandigarh. And the University of Chandigarh is, in fact, I will read this to you. Chandigarh University is a private university on NH95, Chandigarh, Ludhiana. That's the location in the Punjab, Mohali in India. And it's an Indian Institute for Higher Education established under the Chandigarh University Act and is recognized by UGC. Ba-bow! Okay, in
There
fact,
you
it's one
go.
of the best private universities in the Punjab.
So it's
Okay.
real. So the university is real, and
it's
she's
it's-
real,
yeah,
and she was
so much for you
teaching.
haters.
Yeah.
The university is real. It's one of the best private universities in the Punjab, and Dr. Ruth Raina did, in fact, teach there, and she wrote the book I just mentioned. You don't believe me? You go ahead and research it for yourselves.
Well, you know
okay?
what?
So,
We're talking to you, whoever said it wasn't real.
yes, so it's a
Just to
real
you.
thing. Dave,
Uh-huh.
I've got something else, but it's a bit lengthy, so what else do we want to share
Well,
with
just
our
nice and
esteemed
quick.
listenership?
Just nice and quick, those news outlets that wish to be not let's not call it devil's advocate. Let's call it the Clinton News Network on side with CNN and be anti-Trump, because if you've watched news yourself, you'll see a definite slide, a definite a slant of all of the news stories, which would be anti-Trump. Well, it continues in this country. When we had the discussion last weekend after our show, Mackie, it came out, so it was during this week, where our Prime Minister Turnbull had spoken to Donald Trump. There's two funny things that came from this. One was, they said it was a heated, robust discussion, and no, Donald Trump did not hang up on the Prime Minister. I don't really care. I would like to hear that he did. I think mentioning it suggests that he did. Just the mere mention of it, because you would normally never hear that. They had a long and lengthy discussion, and they talked about all the topics. That's all they had to. That's all the news had to say. But no, they didn't. They actually said he didn't hang up, so they're trying to defend themselves. And then during the week, our Prime Minister Turnbull was referred to many times as President Trunbull. There's nothing worse than having your name intentionally mispronounced. It's offensive, and especially by the person you're trying to have a conversation with. So I just have to say that was very funny to hear them throwing this stuff around. Didn't need to. It's one of those things that, you know what? I don't even care. I don't think anyone really does care. And I don't think our Prime Minister, or whoever they happen to be at any time in history, needs to have spoken about their communication with the American president. Unless we're going to go to war. Then they could say, we've spoken to the American president and we're going to go to war. That's it. I don't want to hear anything else. I don't hear about anything. I really don't. And I just, that's just so funny. But the other one, Meki, nearly 6 years, Meki. Nearly 6 years it is. Fukushima is still spilling radiation. And it's abhorrent. I can't believe that it's still going. And we mentioned this before, that, there would be at least until 2020 no action on it. Just let it go. And Japan has no way of being able to stop it. They lied when it first happened. Three reactors melted down, and they've now been able to photograph the hole beneath the reactor. That's the China syndrome. It's from the movie, where it melts down and goes down into the earth. Well, they don't know where it is. They can't really see it. But, and they've sent robots in there, and they've all failed because the radiation's too hot. But the steel melts at 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit, Meki. It's telling you. And it melted straight through it, and it's still melting, and it's making its own lava pool. But the risk now is that there's a hole in the side of the reactor, and the strongest, most deadly radiation is now spewing out the hole. Because, it does what it wants. If there's a hole, it'll leak out. And the US and UK experts have said you should have an 80-kilometer wide no-go zone, but the Japanese and was it not TEPCO? Is it TEPCO? Yep, the power company has said, oh no, look, 30 kilometers is sufficient. We there's no danger with this. Remember their first lies? Oh, everything's fine. Don't worry about it. It's all good. Yeah. Well, they continue with their lies, and the Pacific is the most radiation. It's got radioactive, the most radioactive now it's ever been in recorded history, and there's no end to it. And we're going to be seeing the same thing now for years and years and years. I wouldn't eat Pacific anything.
No. Pacific oysters, Pacific this. The funny thing is this. It's not funny. But 80 kilometers, 30 kilometers. There is no such thing as a safe distance per se. It is all about the amount of radiation you're exposed to over a given period of time.
That's right.
So you could be very far away, and the background radiation has been raised. The radiation is leaking into the Pacific. Look, ideally, you want to just put a huge dome over the whole thing and just completely cut off like a lead dome, maybe even a lead ball somehow. Just get it all around it and shoot it off into space. Because the problem with the radiation, this kind of radiation specifically, is the half-life. So 80 kilometers. Let's say that's the number for the next 25,000 years.
That's right.
Okay, for the next 25,000 years. Then we're good. Yeah. Or 30 kilometers for the next 15,000 years, unless you like having a third arm growing out of your chest.
Well, so Chernobyl still has a no-go zone. There's ghost towns that are radioactive. You can't enter them. So
correct.
This is an area of land so large that that's it. We can't use that anymore. Forget it.
Yeah. We were in Europe at the time when this happened.
Really?
And we didn't hear anything for a long time. The Russians kept a lid on that, I'll tell you what. And my auntie, who lived in Poland at the time, she definitely got the worst of it, or not the worst of it, but she definitely had some effects there on her thyroid and such, right? So, and today, if you go in there, it's still completely a ghost town and whatnot. But you see these mutations of both plants and animals that have occurred. And these like usually it's a chromosomal damages, but also size differences, really huge earthworms, things like that. So we do know that radiation is creating changes, is making changes to the biology as we know it. Good, bad, indifferent, I don't know, but the changes are being made. I can only imagine what happens at Fukushima, because Chernobyl was not as bad as Fukushima, not as bad as
That's
bad
right.
enough, but not as bad as. So the radiation that we're exposed to here is much higher. And the question is, really, in my mind, just how bad will it be, before somebody does something decisive? And again, the report Dave just mentioned, the documentary, is still talking about technology that is decades away from being developed before it can even be used to help clean the site. So we haven't invented this yet, right? That's what they said. The technology hasn't advanced yet enough for us to invent the technology we need to clean the site up.
Completely.
What? Anywho, now, we are talking about ancient tech, and the key point that we try to make, Dave and I, is that we have not reached the end of all knowledge. We have, in fact, not discovered everything yet, and there are things we discover all the time. And this was published recently. In fact, just last week here, I'm looking at the date of it. It mentions 7 archaeological discoveries that you, esteemed listenership, you may not have heard about. Apparently, a river of mercury was found under the Pyramid of the Sun in Teotihuacan, Mexico. It was found in a subterranean tunnel beneath the Temple of the Feathered Serpent in Teotihuacan, Mexico, and archaeologists discovered a river of liquid mercury that could lead the way to the mythical royal tomb of Teotihuacan's rulers. The tunnel's ceiling was very interesting as it had traces of metal powder that reflects light in a curious pattern, almost as if mimicking the night sky. In ancient times, when entering the tunnel with torches, the metal dust shine just like the stars. Researchers believe that these traces are pyrite or magnetite remains, elements not found in the region of Teotihuacan. These metals were brought from somewhere else to paint the ceiling, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. Heat scans of the Great Pyramid of Giza reveal mysterious anomalies. It's, we all know the Great Pyramid, blah, blah, blah. Now, researchers used thermal cameras, and what that revealed higher temperatures in 3 stones in the Great Pyramid of Giza. And this has led experts to believe that they found a previously unknown chamber concealed behind the stones of the Great Pyramid of Khufu. Basically, thermal cameras detected temperature variations in 3 adjacent stones at the bottom of the structure. This discovery came weeks after researchers discovered similar anomalies in the tomb of King Tutankhamun. Specifically, researchers have identified 3 blocks with temperature 6 degrees higher than the others, which is a big difference if you think about it. A massive spiral-shaped structure and a set of towers was discovered underneath. Angkor Wat, Dave. Angkor Wat. Recently, researchers have made an incredible discovery below one of the most important temples on the planet, Angkor Wat. New findings suggest the Temple of Angkor Wat was bounded by a mysterious structure of 1.5 kilometers in length. 8 buried towers and the remains of a massive spiral-shaped structure have been discovered under the ancient Temple of Angkor Wat in Cambodia. All right. According to researchers, the towers form a square which could have been seen in the past to provide support for a much larger structure, for example, right? Experts believe that structure might have been some sort of sanctuary, that was used during the construction of Angkor Wat.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, right? Stonehenge apparently was first erected in Wales. Excuse me. According to new evidence presented by a group of researchers, one of the most enigmatic ancient monuments in Britain, Stonehenge, was first erected in Wales. Researchers have found evidence suggesting that blue stones were actually quarried 500 years before they were put into place in Wiltshire, prompting the theory that Stonehenge might actually be a second-hand monument. What?
They moved it.
Archaeologists, you remember Napoleon took the obelisk from Egypt? Mm-hmm. Right? Hey, I'm not saying this happened here, but maybe it did. Archaeologists have known for a long period of time that the blue stones located in the inner horseshoe of Stonehenge originate from the Preseli Hills in Pembrokeshire, located roughly 150 miles from the Salisbury Plain. New evidence has led numerous researchers to question mainstream theories about the British monument, suggesting that the great prehistoric monument would have been first erected in Wales. Researchers have also discovered nearly identical stones that the ancient builders had extracted for some reason, but mysteriously left behind. Among the numerous findings, researchers also discovered shells and charcoal from the quarry workers' campfires, which have been radiocarbon dated to reveal the date when the stones would have been extracted. Don't have that date for you guys, sorry. Evidence of an 8,000-year-old civilization in Kazakhstan. 8,000 years. And that went unnoticed for decades, thanks to images from space. I say it again, thanks to images from space. Another incredible ancient mystery was revealed this year as satellite pictures of the deserted and remote area of Kazakhstan, yeah, that's where Borat came from, revealed gigantic geometric figures of squares, lines, and crosses. They are now dubbed the Nazca Lines of Kazakhstan, and some of them are even 200 meters in size and only visible from the air. That's right. Now, even though the discovery was made some 8 years ago, thanks to popular software Google Earth when Russian archaeologist Dmitry Day found them, since then several experts in the field have helped expand the research into these mysterious geometric figures. There are 260 geoglyphs that have been discovered so far, with the oldest one being around 8,000 years old. Okay. The largest of them is a giant square composed of 101 raised mounds. And second last one. The last one is Honduras. The Great Sphinx may be 800,000 years old. Whoa, Mackie, that's crazy talk. No, I'm not saying this. At the International Conference of Geoarchaeology and Archaeomineralogy, held in Sofia, that's in Bulgaria, titled Geological Aspect of the Problem of Dating the Great Egyptian Sphinx Construction, the Great Sphinx of Giza is at least 800,000 years old. The authors of this paper are scientists Manishev Vyacheslav. He is from the Institute of Environmental Geochemistry of the National Academy of Sciences in the Ukraine, and Alexander G. Parkomenko, Institute of Geography of the National Academy of Sciences of the Ukraine as well. Now think about that. And finally, last but not least, lost city discovered in the Honduran rainforest. A previously unknown civilization was discovered in a remote Honduran jungle as researchers found what they believe is the legendary city of the Monkey God. An expedition of archaeologists discovered in the jungles of Honduras the remains of an ancient city that correspond to the legendary White City, or City of the Monkey God, according to National Geographic. Okay, Dave, so the reason I wanted to bring all this up, and I'm sorry to have hogged the talking sticks.
Do not apologize.
I wanted to get through it fairly quickly. So, we are still discovering things. We are still learning new things, and not little things either. If we found a whole new potential civilization in Kazakhstan, a whole new one. Where did it come from? I don't know. There it is. Yeah, come on, guys. Even things like I mean, how much more could we possibly discover about Stonehenge? It's been done to death. No, but there's yet more to discover. I mean, I'm not saying it's earth shifting that it might have been erected first in Wales, but we didn't know that. Now we do, or we think it might have happened. The Sphinx may be 800,000 years old. Maybe. I'm not saying it is, but that's what these two scientists.
That changes everything, doesn't it?
Everything, completely. We were not even meant to have been scratching bones at that point.
We weren't scratching our own butts then.
That's right. Okay. And look, there's and what I like here is the fact that these are a lot of discoveries made from space using really modern technology, like the thermal scans of the pyramids, right? So there's all this know-how we bring to the table now is changing the view of the world for us. Right? We are bringing this technology, and we all of a sudden we are learning a lot more. Things we couldn't have learned before, things we couldn't have known before. And that's really what this series is about, guys, right? To make you guys think about what went before and all the crazy stuff that goes with it, right? Because I mean, this is the shiny side out after all.
That's
we
right.
are the incorporated tinfoil hat zone, Dave, right?
We sure are. Look, we're at the bottom of the first hour, and I'm going to say to everybody, get yourself some great merchandise. And I'm holding up my mug. Mackie, do you have your mug today?
I have a mug.
There you go. Well, I've got a shiny side out mug. Revolution Radio one. Big letters, SSO. You should get some of that. You can get our merchandise. You can get some merchandise from Revolution Radio, from the station's website. You can also buy a CD of your favourite host shows for a previous season, an EMP-proof thumb drive with survival documents, or even a 75,000 seed pack. Lasts in your freezer for a long, long time. Now, you never know when you need to pull that out and start using it. Think about, take a look around you. Look on the news. See what's happening. Is this the right time to go down that path? It might be. Follow the instructions carefully, though, when you're ordering, so you can be careful to ensure that you're going to receive the goods. In case your customs blocks you from importing seeds from the US, for example, or you are or aren't allowed to bring a knife into the country. To call in, if you're in the USA, this is 347-688-2902, or you can add Freedom Screen to join our conversation with us on air. But we do request that you go into the chat room at freedomslips.com and talk to us there first. If you live in Kentucky, though, you can pick us up on FM on WZZR 101.3 or anywhere else, and I do mean anywhere else, via any app that you can find Revolution Radio on. And that is TuneIn.com, Web Radio Central, Receiver mobile app, Freedom Slips Mobile has their own mobile app, TalkStream Live, StreamFinder.com, Internet-Radio.com, Radio Tuner, Radio Waves, RadioOnline.co. There's lots of those. And then there's our app, Mackie, Shiny Side Out. Just look for that in your Apple or Android store. Check them out. They're really cool. Now, like I did say, we're talking about ancient tech, and this is show number 256. Mackie?
650 and 200.
That's what I love to hear.
Almost concluding year 5. Another 6 shows.
That's right.
Shows?
No, not even that now. It's only in March.
No. That's right. You're right. Wow.
March is their anniversary.
That's right.
You know, that's pretty cool.
It is cool.
It is cool, and I thank my stars every single day. Anyone who's keen would see that I've got a brand new set of headphones. Some Sennheiser headphones.
Me too.
studio.
Me too. My wife got them for Christmas.
Awesome. Your wife got them
I know,
for you or for her?
For me, yeah.
Okay.
She got them. No, she got them for me specifically. I didn't steal them.
Or appropriated them.
That's
So
right.
yeah, I bought mine from the Sennheiser website, and they were the same cost as the ones that I could find on eBay, the knockoffs. So I bought the original ones, and they're so much better quality. Anyway, get yourself some Sennheiser. That's all I can say. Now, Mackie, so last week we were talking a lot about India, and
Correct.
and there was a lot of information from there. But this time, this show, we still have. It's a jam-packed show, Mackie. I'm looking through the notes.
I know, right?
My goodness me. Look, I'm just going to start off. I'm going to start this sentence, and I want you to hear what we're talking about. In Tibet, no small distance, and speaks of the fiery chariot thusly. This is Bhima flew along in his car, resplendent as the sun and loud as thunder. The flying chariot, some like a flame in the night sky of summer. It swept by like a comet. It was as if two suns were shining. Then the chariot rose up, and all the heaven brightened. This is in the Mahavira of the... Oh, Mackie, you take this one.
The Bhahavabhuti.
Thank
It's,
you.
the Mahavira of the Bhahavabhuti.
It's a Jain text of the 8th century culled from older texts and traditions. And then, Mackie, read this quote.
Yep, we read. An aerial chariot, the Pushpaka, conveys many people to the capital of Ayodhya. The sky is full of stupendous flying machines, dark as night, but picked out by lights with a yellowish glare.
The Vedas, ancient Hindu poems, thought to be the oldest of all of the Indian texts, describe Vimanas of various shapes and sizes. There's 3 points here. Point number 1, Mackie.
The Anihotra Vimana, which had 2 engines. The Elephant Vimana, with more engines than 2, so like a think of it like a freight plane. And thirdly, other types named after the kingfisher, ibis, and other animals. Now, you might think that is unusual. Not really. Look what we name our jets and the Harrier, right? For example, and so forth. So it is right within the tradition of aviation to name your flying machines after birds of prey and others. Yes. Anyway, go on, my friend.
Unfortunately, Vimanas, like most scientific discoveries, were ultimately used for war. Atlanteans used their flying machines, the Veil Ixi, a similar type of aircraft, to literally try to subjugate the world, it would seem. If Indian texts are to be believed, that is, the Atlanteans, known as Asvins, in the Indian writings were apparently even more advanced technology than the Indians, and certainly of a more warlike temperament. Just use that to think about how we would place people today. Mackie, we have military jets. The US has military jets. Which of the 2 countries use them more for war? That's an easy one. Pepsi? Right?
Partial credit.
Yeah. So yes, the US would use theirs more for war than, say, Britain or, even Russia for that matter. If you did historical now, really there hasn't been that much compared to the rest of the world. So, Mackie, keep going with this.
Look, yeah, and the key thing is that we seem to be the Rama Empire, which was in direct competition with the Asvins or the Atlanteans, as we think they are. Again, none of this is rock solid, and a lot of supposition, part of this particular presentation. They were in an arms race, just like we are today, or were. That's nothing new. It's human nature, I guess. Now, although no ancient texts on the Atlantean Vailixi, which are the flying machines, are known to exist, Some information has come down through esoteric and occult sources which describe the flying machines more in an oral tradition, and certainly nothing in standard text that you would be able to look up for yourselves. Similar, if not identical to the Vimanas, Vailixi were generally cigar-shaped and had the capability of maneuvering underwater as well in the atmosphere and even outer space.
Wow.
Other vehicles, yeah, I know, right? Other vehicles like Vimanas were saucer-shaped and could apparently also be submerged. Now, just before we move off this, just very quickly, it's important to understand that the very first sightings that we had were, in fact, around, this is like in the 19th century, but I mean, of course, sightings go back much further than that, but we had cigar-shaped sightings. We had saucer-shaped sightings. We had different shapes as well, but those
Let's
are
call
the
them
most
different
prevalent.
configurations.
Correct. Now, think about it this way, guys. Now, these texts we're reading here to you and giving you extracts of are thousands of years old, thousands and thousands of years old, right? And some of them are based on oral traditions, which are even older than that. To come across craft as they are described in the ancient Vedic texts, it's astounding, because we see these craft today, and if you've seen an unidentified flying object and see what it can do and how it maneuvers, and even if you listen to or read Charles Berlitz and even T. Sanderson, read their books, how they can also submerge and a subject many people don't really talk much about are the USOs.
That's right.
Which are the unidentified submarine objects, right? So they also exist. So to come across this, then, and in fact have it described in the way that it was described these many thousands of years ago, and to come across it today, it seems as though those craft have survived. Maybe the civilization that has spawned them has somehow, somewhere, survived, folded away neatly in some kind of space-time continuum, or not. Or the Nazis, which we discussed last week as well, found something, which is now, of course, being used by the United States and Russia, liberally, I'm sure. So just keep that in mind, because we are talking about things that are very, very old in the context of something that is very modern, a very recent phenomenon. Dave?
Look, I have to agree with Mekki. Remember the 15th century newspaper article, Mekki? The 15th century one in I forget the town it was over.
Germany.
It was in Germany. They had cross and disc, like spherical and cigar-shaped objects seen in the sky before flight. People today can confuse them as migrating geese, temperature inversions, and all sorts of things.
Swamp gas.
I love swamp gas. Migrating geese is another favorite. Temperature inversion, like I said, and there's a whole bunch of others. Yeah, but one of the big ones is mistaking it for our current flying objects. Well, if you go back far enough, we didn't have any flying objects, so things in the sky weren't ours, and that was pretty easy to determine.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's just, if you watch it long enough, according to that report from in the 1500s, they could determine who was winning and who was losing. It's like watching a football game, and it's easy to determine who was winning and who was losing. Yeah, so in the same way, and I have to say that if you can determine that, I think you've got a pretty good handle on what's going on. All right? Our brains are configured for that. That's why, the Colosseum in Rome was good. That's why we're programmed to actually enjoy watching something like that, a conflict. Isn't it bizarre, Mekki, that we are? Now,
I know, right?
Yeah, completely. There's a whole nother show. Now, according to the Eklau Kushana, author of The Ultimate Frontier, in an article he wrote in 1966, that's 1 year before I was born, Vailixi were first developed in Atlantis 20,000 years ago, and the most common ones are, wait for it, saucer-shaped, of generally trapezoidal cross-section with 3 hemispherical engine pods on the underside. Now that description right there sounds just like what was the fellow that one of the first whistleblowers?
Oh, Arnold.
No, the guy that worked at S4.
Oh, I see who you mean.
Yeah,
More
yeah.
recently. I can't remember his
Oh,
name.
with the-
Sorry, in the chat room, anyone?
Yeah, let us know. I forget his name. I'm sorry. They use it. This is another quote from his The Ultimate Frontier. It says, they use a mechanical anti-gravity device driven by engines developing approximately 80,000 horsepower. The Ramayana in the Mahabharata and other texts speak of the hideous war that took place some 10 or 12,000 years ago between Atlantis and Rama, using weapons of destruction that could not be imagined by readers until the second half of the 19th century.
20th, but yes.
I'm sorry, the 20th century, the 1900s. Okay. They're writing about weapons that they're writing. The stories talked about it, but since then, no one had seen anything up until about 50 years ago, 60 years ago. All
That's
right.
right.
Of the kind of things that they'd written these stories about. And as soon as they came about, it all seemed to fall into place. It's like the picture of the helicopter, the glyph of the helicopter in the temple.
Abydos.
In Abydos Temple. Thanks, Meki. So it's just like that. We thought it was an insect up until when we made them. Then we went, no way. We had a sudden realization that the story was true, same as this one. And Meki, I'll give you the quotes and you can take it. So the ancient Mahabharata, one of the sources of Vimanas, goes on to tell the awesome destructiveness of the war. Meki.
And this is directly quoted from that. The weapon was a single projectile charged with all the power of the universe, an incandescent column of smoke and flame, as bright as the 1,000 suns rose in all its splendor. An iron thunderbolt, a gigantic messenger of death, which reduced to ashes the entire race of the Vrishinis and the Andakas. The corpses were so burned as to be unrecognizable. The hair and nails fell out. Pottery broke without apparent cause, and the birds turned white. After a few hours, all foodstuffs were infected. To escape from this fire, the soldiers threw themselves in streams to wash themselves and their equipment. End quote.
It would seem that the Mahabharata is describing an atomic war. That's what it sounds like to me too. References like this one are not isolated, but battles using fantastic array of weapons and aerial vehicles are common in all of the Indian books. Meki.
One even describes a Vimana Vailix battle on the moon. The above section I just quoted very accurately describes what an atomic explosion would look like and the effects of the radioactivity on the population. Jumping into the water, is the only respite. Not that it's going to do anything for you, but it will help with the burns. When the Rishi city of Mohenjo-Daro, which we've spoken about at length, was excavated by archaeologists in the last century, they found skeletons just lying in the streets, some of them holding hands, as if some great doom had suddenly overtaken them. Those skeletons are among the most radioactive ever found, on par with those found at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now, we've done some digging, because we've mentioned this before, and it was actually a Russian expedition that makes these claims. A Russian expedition. And since then, you will be hard-pressed, if you go to Mohenjo-Daro yourself, to find any of the described things. Now, either it was cleaned the site, or it was, or it was a hoax from the start, which I don't really believe. But
I don't believe that either.
you can no longer witness this for yourself. So we only have the very first Russian scientific report to fall back on. In fact, ancient cities whose brick and stone walls were literally vitrified, that is fused together, can be found in India, Ireland, Scotland, France, Turkey, and other places. So the stone is fused together, vitrified. There's no logical explanation for the vitrification of stone forts and cities, except from extreme heat, such as an atomic blast would produce. Dave?
Yes, completely. Oh, now I've lost it.
That's okay.
Where we're
Furthermore,
at. Yep, there we go. Furthermore, at Mohenjo-Daro, a well-planned city laid on a grid with a plumbing system superior to those used in Pakistan and India today. The streets were littered with black lumps of glass. These globs of glass were discovered to be clay pots that had melted under intense heat. With the cataclysmic sinking of Atlantis and the wiping out of Rama with atomic weapons, the world collapsed into a stone age of sorts, and modern history picks up a few thousand years later.
Yet it would seem that not all the Vimanas and Vailixia of Rama and Atlantis were gone. Built to last for thousands of years, many of them would still be in use, as evidenced by Ashoka's 9 Unknown Men and the Lhasa manuscript we've mentioned before.
Mackie,
That secret
we've
societies...
done a whole show on that one.
We did indeed, my friend. In fact, that's one of our most popular shows. If you haven't listened to it, 9 Unknown Men. Just Google it. 9 Unknown Men. It's on YouTube. Or you can go to the archives.
Yes.
Clearly, most of you are subscribed by now. That secret societies or brotherhoods of exceptional enlightened human beings would have preserved these inventions and the knowledge of science, history, and so forth does not seem surprising. And again, this is one of the key observations, one of the key learnings we would like you guys to take away from this. This kind of knowledge just doesn't disappear, poof, into thin air, no? It is preserved by the few. By the few. In my opinion, right, Dave can speak for himself, the few that are still alive that were alive then. We spoke about immortality. It's a whole different show cycle. Educate yourself and see what you think about that.
Completely possible.
I think so. I think so. And many well-known historical personages, including Jesus, Buddha, Lao Tzu, Confucius, Krishna, Zoroaster, Mahavira, Quetzalcoatl, Akhenaten, Moses, and more recent inventors, and of course many other people who will probably remain anonymous, were probably members of such secret organizations, Dave.
It's interesting to note that when Alexander the Great invaded India more than 2,000 years ago, his historians chronicled that at one point they were attacked by flying fiery shields that dove at his army and frightened the cavalry. These flying saucers did not use any atomic bombs or beam weapons on Alexander's army, however, perhaps out of benevolence, and Alexander went on to conquer India. It has been suggested by many writers that these brotherhoods keep some of their Vimanas and Vailixi in secret caverns in Tibet or some other place is Central Asia, and the Lop Nor Desert in western China is known to be the center of a great UFO mystery. Perhaps it is here that many of the airships are still kept in underground bases, much as the Americans, British and Soviets have built around the world in the past few decades. Mackie, I'm just going to add something to this because
Please.
We've got a few minutes until the top of the hour. I wanted to say that there's been a couple of times in the recent history, especially during the occupation of Iraq by US soldiers, where stories of discoveries of, there was something stuck in time in a cave where some of the world leaders went to visit it, like it was a gateway, or a UFO still powered up in a cave. Why? And this is as soon as those stories started coming out during the Iraq conflict and the destruction of some of these things that were in Iraq by the rebels in Iraq attempting to oppose the US occupancy. It makes you wonder, and it certainly made Mekki and I wonder, what was the true purpose of this invasion and the occupancy of the US there? Was it to grab these last found artifacts, to discover them all? What was it really all about? Maybe the oil ruse we were all led to believe wasn't real. Maybe it was a technology find. It would certainly be worth the money. And I think my thoughts are that it's quite likely when you start to hear that these stories have, to be honest, only just surfaced in the Western world, and now are starting to be, in the last 60 years being proven true. What else is there?
Yeah.
What else is there still to find?
Yeah. We haven't even scratched the right places. Most of the things we found by sheer dumb luck.
Oh yeah.
Sheer dumb luck. Someone was digging here, someone was digging there. It goes not just archaeological discoveries, but also, fossils and things like that. Dumb luck. The only person that I know of that went out there with a plan, armed with this Homer and the Iliad, was
Go on.
Schliemann.
Schliemann.
Yeah, Schliemann. He, complete amateur, by the way, and he went on. Oh well, Homer said, and this was written 2,500 years ago. He said Troy should be here, and lo and behold, Troy was there.
No, that's right. That's right.
So,
I remember that.
Yes, you've got a guy that followed the source code here. Thank you very much. Everybody else is pontificating and going on about it. And, oh no, this is what it is. Oh, listen to me, I know a lot. No, it's not. But Dave is completely correct. We're looking at all the wrong places.
And the chat room hasn't eventuated in finding out who it was, Mekki, that worked at S4.
Sorry.
I can't remember. In the break, I'll look it up.
3 meters. My laugh is 3 meters deep. You know that song, How Deep Is Your Laugh? And I can't help myself, but it's actually 3 meters, in case you're wondering.
Nice.
I'm being facetious.
Exactly 3 meters. Measured. Exactly. I measured it one day. That's very funny. Look, I'm hoping that everyone's on board with us today, and has been following this show cycle. It's quite a lot to take in, and I have to admit that it's challenging to your belief system. When you start to raise evidence that there is real proof out there that there was a technological civilization that occurred before ours, it's frightening. It's frightening to see what had happened to them. That they'd done exactly what we're afraid of doing to ourselves. Wiping ourselves back to the Stone Age. Yet again, apparently. Do we really want to go down that path? Well, it's looking inevitable at some point. We're going to be so stupid as to do it. Or something does it for us, like an impact. Those things are the worries. Now, whatever happened to them, through whatever their poor means they had, and their poor diplomacy, which I think is what we're entering into, a time of bad diplomacy. Or maybe it's going to be good. I don't know. There's some music. We should take our own precautions. See you on the other side. Donate. Yes. Donate. I'm donating.
Donate now. Donate.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
There is no denying the world is awakening. We see it in the global uprisings and demonstrations of the people around the planet and the new way of thinking and living that is arising naturally within each one of us and our communities. I have been a major player in this global shift and movement for over 20 years and have helped tens of thousands of people around the world change their lives and find their voice in order to help create the paradigm change we so desperately need. Join me here at Revolution Radio on the Just Bernard Show every Tuesday at noon Eastern Time for 2 hours of powerful interviews and discussion with some of the most influential visionaries of consciousness, alternative media, and suppressed knowledge. We promise to reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience.
Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank, or banks for that matter. Are your banking records safe in your hands? So when they get things fixed and repaired, you can say, hey, look, this is what I had. You have it. I want it back. Is your personal data safe? Family records, addresses, phone numbers? Well, squeeze on over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's www.freedomslips.com. Click the banner on the homepage for the EMP-proof bullet drive to get the full scoop of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
On the go? Still want to listen? Don't have one of those fancy phones with too many buttons. Don't know what an app is? Or you don't even care? Well, we got you here at Revolution Radio. Now you can dial in 24/7 to listen to our shows. We have a number for Studio A and Studio B, and best of all, it's free. Don't forget, carrier charges for your cell phone provider may apply though, so check with your cell provider to make sure. So ready? Here you go. Get a pen. Here's the number. Studio A is 712-432-6958, and Studio B is 716-748-012. Thank you very much for listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station in the world. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we turn you to your host.
Hello and welcome back to Dave and Mackie's Shiny Side Out, show number 256, 615, 200. Donate if you can. This is Listener Funded Radio. Please make Nighthawk and all the others keep us on the air, because this costs money, believe it or not, and we are doing this pro bono. So if you can, please do. Now, food of thought for the day. You were not born to go to work, pay bills, and die. You must do more with your life, okay? Not born to go to work, pay bills, and die. There's more. I know, it's crazy, right? But there is. We are talking
crazy
about...
talk, Mackie.
Crazy talk, right? Hey, be a drone. Shut up now. You, kill him. Ha, ha, ha. Independent thought alarm. Pew, pew, pew.
I am
you wait,
I am
one
not
day this will
thinking
happen.
independently. No.
They cannot tolerate your thoughts. They make me itchy. Now, in our
funny.
Investigation of the ancient technology, the ancient stories, if you will, of civilizations that went before us, we thought there must be some civilizations that have lasted for a long time. And indeed, there were. 2, to be precise, to this day, India and China. Now, clearly not exactly the same through the millennia, but coherent enough to be considered continuous by most. Now, having said that, we thought then something should have survived in those civilizations from those very, very ancient times. And lo and behold, it has. We've just spent a great deal of time on India, specifically. Things like the Vimanas and the Nazi connection during World War II and prior to World War II, of course. The interest of the Orient that saw a rise, a spike in the late 19th century with people like Madame Blavatsky and the Theosophists and Aleister Crowley and those guys. We are now directing our attention to China. And we're going to talk about a few things that China did in fact invent in recent history, and some things, in fact, lost in history, in my opinion, like silk, but we'll talk about that. So we'll take these in turn, I think is probably the easiest.
Yeah, sure.
And the first one is paper making, and paper that we believe was first invented in China in about 2,000 years ago, roughly 2,000 years ago. The invention greatly affected human history, clearly. Makes it a lot easier to write books and whatnot. Paper already existed in China, but in 105 of the Common Era, which 105 AD, a eunuch named Kai Lun made significant innovation and helped drive its widespread adoption. His advanced papermaking technology then spread to Central Asia and the world through the Silk Road. So let's be clear here. Paper existed prior to 2,000 years ago. It was merely the ingenious modifications or improvements that Kai Lun made that helped spread it. Okay, so paper older than 2,000 years, widespread use about 2,000 years.
The next one is movable type printing. And pardon me. I remember, Mekki, when I was a kid, I went to the effectively News Limited. It was one of the original newspapers. And they had a press, a movable type press where they're all precast metal, and the guy would assemble the words by putting letters together in rows and then set those rows in a machine, and then it would all get clamped in place, and a large piece of paper would be spread across the top of it, and a roller would go back and forward with ink. That's how it was done. Later on, they precast all of the words, so they would type it in a computer. The computer would make basically whole rows on its own, all joined together with correct kerning. However, wood block printing was already a widely used technique in the Tang dynasty. However, this kind of printing tech was expensive and time-consuming until the Song dynasty, 960 to 1279 AD. A man named Bi Shen, and he lived from 990 to 1051, invented movable type printing, making it quicker and easier. He first carved individual characters on pieces of clay and then hardened them with fire. These movable type pieces were later glued to an iron plate to print a page and then broken up and redistributed for another page. This kind of printing tech rapidly spread across Europe, leading up to the Renaissance and later all around the world.
Absolutely. So Gutenberg was really only copying what the Chinese had done already. key thing here to understand, and this is why they're here, these examples, paper making and especially movable type printing rather. We spoke at length about the mechanism of Antikythera and things like that, and it is easy to dismiss it as a fluke and just not talk about it anymore. But we're talking about two things here. So paper making and movable type printing, which saw improvements to them. Improvements. They weren't invented at the time. They were greatly improved. Now, the mechanism of Antikythera is completely working. It is not a prototype that we can see, or it just works. It's a functioning tool that was used, I'm sure, by the captain of the ship that unfortunately sank. Nobody would argue with us if we said it would take a lot of civilization and a lot of people working together to make paper and movable type printing a thing. A lot of things have to come together for you to actually think of this, even to come along. I mean, if you don't have enough people that read books or can be educated, if you don't have anything to write down, if you never thought of writing stuff down, right? And then printing. Why would you print? Well, the only reason you print is so you can have lots of it available for lots of people, rather than handwriting it. You go handwrite a book, it'll take you years, and you probably only do a few copies of that particular book. So nobody would argue with Dave or I when we said, oh well, clearly a civilization had to be in place to enable all of that kind of stuff. Nobody, because it's as plain as the nose on my face. However, people will argue with us until they're blue in the face that this mechanism of Antikythera is a one-off, it's a fluke, it's this. No, it's not. And it's not the only example either. It took a civilization to build it, to get all the parts together, to have the mathematics available to build the gears that show the movement of the planets. Hello, it's advanced. Okay, and off he comes off his high horse. Gunpowder. Gunpowder about 1,000 years ago. It was invented by Chinese Taoists, or several, in fact, alchemists, when they tried to find a potion to gain human immortality by mixing elemental sulfur, charcoal, and saltpeter, the salts of Peter. Again, the quest for immortality, the quest for the philosopher's stone, has led to the invention of gunpowder. It is generally believed that gunpowder spread to Europe during the Mongol expansion of 1200 to 1300 AD. The interesting fact is that the Chinese used this discovery mainly for firecrackers, while Europeans created cannons and guns and dominated China in the mid-1800s. A different kind of mindset, Dave. And I find this fascinating. People always say, and I always, as a student of history, ask myself, why did the Europeans expand so violently and so dramatically? And why were they so successful? What is different about the Europeans? Their mindset. Because clearly the Chinese could have easily spread across the world. And not just the Chinese, other cultures as well. Not a problem. It was the Europeans that took to colonizing. And I haven't got an answer. It's a rhetorical question. It's just a fascinating thing, don't you think?
Oh, I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
War changes everything.
Yeah.
The technology that's created, if it's a long enough war, technology has changed throughout the course of the war because of having to counter what the other people do. If you have a lot of wars that have short gaps between them, you think you've made something awesome, and then you try it out on the other people, and they've already got a counter to it, so it becomes useless. You've got to continually, perpetually upgrade and change because they adapt. The opposition adapts. You come out, Mekki, just for example, you come out with longbows, so people have wooden shields. Yeah, you build a castle, people make trebuchets, and they build long ladders, and you think you're doing great, yeah, but then there's always something else. So there's this perpetual leveling of the countering. So if you're right, if China, because that's who we're talking about, if China had have developed a weapon and had the mindset of conquering, they would have done it. Because they had
Correct.
the only copy of that tech. Straight up. If they made guns and cannons, bingo, that would have been it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I like rice, honestly. You know, partial to a couple of really good dishes. You know, I wouldn't have minded really. Just saying. You know. Anyway, what else is there? The compass, created in 11 AD. Sorry, 1100 AD. Big difference. A compass is a navigational instrument, as we all know, that shows directions. The compass was invented by the Chinese between the 2nd century BC and the 1st century. Wow. Between 1 and 200 BC, Meki. It was first used in Feng Shui, the layout of buildings. In fact, my house was designed using that, a lot of the methods.
Is that right?
Yeah, completely.
Oh, wow.
There's some really good ones. We should do a show on it. By
Yes, I do.
1000 AD, however, 800 years later, or approximately, navigational compasses were commonly used in Chinese ships, enabling them to navigate. Arab traders sailing to China might have learned of the tech and brought them to the West. You've just got to remember that you can't just have a compass on a ship because of the motion of the ship. So you need to have it arrested by fluid motion
Correct.
for it and to be stabilized. So yeah, that's something else, Meki. I have to say, that's awesome.
I know, right? And this is the kicker here. Now, so you have the Chinese that had black powder at the same time. They could, well, navigate anywhere they wanted, pretty much, with
Yeah.
large ships, large fleets, and yet they did not colonize the world. They didn't go ahead and colonize. A very interesting mindset, very different from the Western. Now, the next one will be of particular interest to everybody, I'm sure. It's alcohol. And the alcohol, well, look, they say here 2,000 years, 4,000 years, 5,000 years. The origins of alcohol are lost in the fogs and mists of time. We know that there are certain species of animals, like in fact monkeys even partake in fermenting fruit. So fruit falls off a tree, it ferments, it has alcoholic content, and the
Even
monkeys
fruit
get drunk.
fruit flies intentionally, and they do, this is a study, when they're denied or failed to reproduce because of competition's a bit too high, their little tiny short little life, they will turn to the fruit that's been fermented the longest, i.e. having the highest alcoholic content. And they will drown, this is a fruit fly, will drown their sorrows.
That's right. Interesting. Now,
That is interesting
think
topic.
about that. So yeah, well, and Dave is right here. So this it's again, this actually goes into a completely different tangent, but
That's not like us, Vicky. We're a tinfoil hat
we never
zone.
do it. Straight and narrow. That's us. down the line. No, but I think it is very difficult to dismiss any living thing from you as being inferior because it isn't human. Every single living thing has a will, a right to live. Yeah, it has a motivation. It has feelings. Okay, it has avoidance behavior. Yeah. So there's a show coming on that, and once you understand the hypothesis, you understand that we can't avoid that at all. This is a topic that's probably at the heart of where we are. The respect for all living and feeling things. That includes plants, by the way. We are put here in this prison violating this fundamental concept every single day. Even if you're vegan, you're still violating it. Your very existence violates the covenant of life. That's too deep for now. We'll talk about that some other time.
Because
Now, alcohol.
plants can detect each other's pain
Yes.
and put up their own defense
yes.
to prevent it. I'm with you, Mackie, all the way. Let's go.
That's it, alcohol. So let's get back on track here. So the inhabitants of the Arabian Peninsula, which is really ironic if you think about it, were widely believed to be the first brewers. So that's the people of Arabia, the Saudis. I don't know. I hope you're with me with the irony here. However, in 2013, a 9,000-year-old pottery found in Henan province in China revealed the presence of alcohol 1,000 years before Arabian counterparts. Alcohol is known as Ju. It's actually the word for water as well in Chinese, and is often used as a spiritual offering to heaven and the earth. Or ancestors, in fact, in ancient China. So ancestor worship is something the East is very strong on, and we can talk about that at some other point as well. Studies have shown that beer with an alcoholic content of 4 or 5%, which is pretty much what we're drinking today, like standard Foster's or Budweiser or whatever it might be, was wildly, I'm sure it was called consumed wildly, but certainly widely and wildly consumed in ancient China, and was even mentioned on oracle bone inscriptions of the Shang dynasty some 4,000 years ago.
Wow.
Wildly and widely.
Well, it just might start off with a taste. I'll have a taste of that beer of yours. Gee, that's all right, isn't it? Woohoo!
Tastes way too good.
Shortly afterwards, after a couple of them, you know what? I never liked you. No. I'm kidding. I kid. One of my friends was brewing beer, Mackie. I just have to say, a good friend of mine, and he made a beer that we called the Eraser. You drank it and you didn't know where you were or who you were. You didn't know what was going on anymore. And that was something else. Even hardened people, Mackie, that could drink 6 or 7, schooners and still have a tremendous conversation with you. No, they succumbed to the Eraser beer. Very nice. It's very funny.
To the brewery.
Just on a side note, it's very funny. But yeah, thank you. You know who you are, and I do miss you. He's moved away, and I miss him, his beer, his family, and all the good times. The mechanical clock is the next item up here, and it's said to be known. It's said to 725 AD. The world's first mechanical clock, water-driven spherical birds, was invented by Yi Xing, a Buddhist monk, 725 AD. It was operated by dripping water, which powered a wheel that made 1 revolution in 24 hours. And Mackie, there's a very similar clock to this, to be honest.
Okay.
In the Hornsby Shopping Centre courtyard, between everything. In the middle of the Hornsby Shopping Centre, it's not a replica of his invention, but it's a clock driven by water, and it's mechanical only. It's water mechanical. Now, hundreds of years later, the inventors Su Song developed a more sophisticated clock called the Cosmic Empire in 1092, 200 years earlier, before the mechanical clock was invented in Europe. 200
and
years
again,
before.
Yeah. I submit here, because the mechanism of Antikythera is clearly much older than that. I mean, the ship sank some 2,500 years ago.
Yep.
I submit here that this idea of gearing and clockwork predates even this particular Chinese invention. The next one is tea production, and you might not think that's a very big thing, but it is, and because tea production, and same with coffee in a way, speaks to a very high level of civilization and sophistication, because you have time to sit down and drink tea. And the Chinese have taken drinking tea to a whole different level. I went to several tea shops in Singapore as well as in China, and it's a thing. You sit down for a few hours, 2 or 3 hours, and you drink tea the way the Chinese drink it. It is extremely relaxing. It is it's an experience, so I highly recommend it. However, now this goes back about 5,000 years. Whenever something goes back 5,000 years or more, as far as I'm concerned, its origin is lost in the midst of time. According to an old Chinese legend, tea was first discovered by Shen Nong, the Chinese father of agriculture, around, it is very specific, 2737 BC. Whenever I see a number like that in relation to anything, the creation of the world, which was in fact 4114, I think, according to Bishop Asher, 4004 BC. Apparently it was a Thursday afternoon. I'm skeptical. I'm always skeptical. But I do believe that the origins of tea are lost in the mists of time. In the Tang Dynasty, which was 618 to 907 AD, some 4,000 years later, tea became a popular drink enjoyed by all the social classes. Cha Jing, or the Book of Tea, was written by Lu Yu in the Tang Dynasty and explicated ways to cultivate tea, tea drinking, and different classifications of tea in details. The book is considered as the world's first monograph about tea, and the world's oldest and still living tea tree can be found in Lincang in China, and it's about 3,200 years old.
Wow. Meki, I have to say something about tea. You only pick the top 3 leaves. The new leaves, not the old leaves. Only the new leaves. So if you've ever seen a tea, a documentary, they're the only leaves you pick. The rest of the tree stays intact, and of course it makes some more new leaves, and they're the ones you pick. So from an art point of view and choosing the right things, I'm with you. I believe that you don't just pick some old leaves and put them in some hot water and drink it. I believe that the entire thing has come from the previous turnaround. That to me, yeah. And it's, the different types of tea are really, really delicious. And I could go on, but I'm not going to. I like this one, Meki. Silk. Silk, about 6,000 years ago. Far out. That's a long time. 6,000 years. Silk, one of the oldest fibers, originated in China as early in its use. Originated in China as early as 6,000 years ago. The earliest evidence of silk was discovered in Yangshao culture site in how do I say that one, Meki?
I think it's Xianxian.
Xianxian. Okay, awesome. County, Shaanxi province, China, where a silk cocoon was found cut in half, dating back to between 4,000 and 3,000 BC. Chinese people mastered sophisticated silk weaving tech and closely guarded secrets around that, and the West had to pay gold of the same weight for the silk. Wow.
Right.
They kept the manufacturing secret. In ancient times, the silk was a very important item made in China, and for many centuries, businessmen transported this precious item from China to the West, forming the famous Silk Road. We've all heard about the Silk Road. Well, there you have it. Do you know, right. Meki, of course, what they do is they take only a very small percentage of the silk worm cocoons and don't boil them, because cutting them in half reduces your ability and it leads to strands. They can peel a single strand from a cocoon by boiling the cocoon and killing it, and it disturbs the adhesive, and they can unravel the entire cocoon. I've seen the machines.
Yeah.
Extraordinary.
It is, in fact. I mean, to come up with that in the first place, to even think that this would be a very strong kind of thread to use in a fabric is quite an astonishing discovery, in my opinion. Yes, Highlander, both Dave and I are on the air. Welcome to the chat room. The umbrella, of all things, you think, the parasol, the umbrella. Interestingly, the umbrella was not invented to shield one from rain, but rather to shield one from the sun. That's why it was called a parasol. So the Chinese invented the umbrella to be protected against the sun. Now, this goes back as far as 3,500 years ago. Legend has it that Lu Ban, a Chinese carpenter and inventor, created the first umbrella. Inspired by children using lotus leaves as rain shelter, he created an umbrella by making a flexible framework covered by a cloth. I submit that it's probably older than that, But hey, it might not be. It might be Lu Ban that came up with it.
Well, just remember, this is what it gets me, Meki. I was watching a show the other day, and I heard the word "sol" used in it for the sun, and it made me start to look at a whole bunch of other things, and one of those was the word parasol. Isn't that interesting?
That's right. It is, my friend. It's a serendipity.
It
Synchronicity.
Synchronicity. The Holistic Detective. If you haven't seen Dirk Gently, watch it. It's great. Both the English and American versions.
Read the books. Do
Yeah,
yourself
the
a favor
books.
and read the books.
And who's the author, Mackie?
Dirk Gentles.
Douglas Adams.
Douglas Adams?
Yes.
Douglas Adams. Fantastic. You must read the books. You must. Anyway.
The TV shows do it some justice. The English one was tremendous. The American one, I actually have to say, is awesome. The series. I watched the 8 parts of the first series. Mackie, acupuncture. I've had acupuncture. Have you had acupuncture?
I have had extensively, yes.
2,300 years ago is what the claim is. The oldest Chinese medicine book is at Neijing, also known as the classic of internal medicine of the Yellow Emperor, shows that acupuncture was widely used as a therapy in China, no less, much before the time it was written. Besides, various kinds of acupuncture needles were discovered in the tomb of Prince Lu Sheng, who died around 200 BC. This is further proof that acupuncture were already in use in China more than 2,000 years ago.
The point here is it was written down then.
That's
It's
right.
the oldest. Okay, and that's the book that has come down to us and survived. And now I submit yet again that acupuncture is much older than that, because if it was already widely used, it isn't like it just was invented. At
That's
that point.
right.
It was already, so clearly it goes much back further
But
into the
acupuncture
history.
also shows a complete understanding of the human body.
Bingo.
And you don't just start stabbing yourself with needles in the hope to do something, right?
That's right.
It's not. So, yeah, that you have to look at it that way, and that the belief system, the understanding and the documentation of this has gone back much, much further than that. Mackie.
And think about this, then we're going on to the iron smelting. Both the Indian culture and the Chinese culture talk about the energetic or the energy systems that run through your body as well as the earth. The chakra points, the chi energy, these are all very similar concepts, which I think go back to an origin culture with which both the Chinese and the Indians learned from or took things from. So just something to keep in mind there, guys. Now, iron smelting, about 3,000 years ago, is given here as that. Archaeological evidence revealed that iron smelting technology was developed in China as early as the 5th century BC in the Zhou dynasty, which went from 1000 BC to 256 BC. During the spring and autumn and warring states periods, China went into a flourishing period for iron smelting. In the Han dynasty, 202 BC to 222 AD, almost coexistent with the Roman Empire there. A central government monopolized the iron smelting, and that saw remarkable developments and improvements in that particular discipline.
It sure is. But, you can't say that without describing porcelain. I know that's a bad segue. But you see, porcelain has something else. I just flicked Mackie an image which he can have a look at while I'm talking. Porcelain isn't just ceramic. Porcelain is taking ceramic to a brand new level. Okay? So you make something out of clay, any old clay, doesn't really matter, and you fire it, and you make it red hot, and you take it out. It's still basically hard clay with no air in it. Porcelain is a completely different thing. It's a specific kind of clay. Very fine grained, and you don't just take it to a baked point, you take it way hotter than that until it does what, Mackie? It vitrifies.
That's correct. That is correct.
Okay, and so that's a completely different thing, and I dare say that to make something smelt at a particular temperature for a long enough time, you need a particular kind of technology with a particular kind of industry behind it, and that's very important to remember. All right. Now, porcelain is a great invention of ancient China. The earliest porcelain emerged in the Shang dynasty, 1600 to 1000 BCE. Okay. And matured during the Tang dynasty. If you watch any of those, relic hunters or anything like that, what's the other one in England, Mekki, where they go? The Antiques Roadshow. They have a particular focus on the Tang dynasty porcelain. During the Song dynasty, 1960 to 1279, porcelain production technology reached its unprecedented height due to its focus on shape and the tactile experience of the glaze. Also very important. Chinese porcelain was highly prized in the world, and many artworks had been introduced into the West through the Silk Road. And people weren't just... They were even being included not only in the West, but they were being included in Western art, on the table or here or there, when people were having, their scenery painted, someone's in like photographs that they were now being seen in magazines, you know what I mean, of the day. So Mekki, right before the earthquake detector, I did want to bring this up because I think this is really important. That image that I sent you.
Yes. Fascinating.
It is
I've seen
fascinating.
it before, but it's fascinating.
Okay. It shows this similarity between deities like the
Semiramis and Tammuz.
Yeah, like Enki. So it's all of the it's showing a baby being held by their god or their highly prized character. So like Jesus and Mary. You've got the same thing. You've got Isis and Horus. You've got Tammuz held by, was it Semiramis?
Yes.
You've got Enki and Namu. And there's an Asian one, Mekki.
Xingmu.
There you go. And then, of course, you've got Krishna and Devaki. So these same stories, when you talk about the father and the three sons, I just wanted to bring that out. The father and the three sons, you've also got this. These tales are the same. And in each one of these countries, the stonework is the same. And it's all yet more proof that the civilizations were all one. We were one, and all these stories came down and were just slightly changed into this new era that we live in.
That's correct. It is. There has to be a seed culture at some point. In fact, we believe many seed cultures. But it's baby steps, guys. Baby steps, because people have a hard time coming with us on this journey. Right? This is why it's it's taken 5 years to flesh out the hypothesis as much as we have, and we're not finished yet. So if you've listened to the hypothesis shows, then you will know some of the content, but there's still more developing in that. Anywho, but yes, Dave, thank you very much for that. So there is a lot of cultural artifacts that come to us from different sources, which are almost identical, right? Almost identical. They're not just archetypes. Just they're just very, very interesting. Another one is here. Another Chinese invention is, in fact, the earthquake detector some 2,000 years ago. And according to court records of the Chinese, of course, of the later Han Dynasty, a seismograph, an earthquake detector, was created by the brilliant inventor Zhang Heng in 132 AD, so almost 2,000 years ago. Its function was to determine the direction of an earthquake. The direction of an earthquake. Imagine that. Not just if there is one, but what direction it's traveling in. In 138 AD, this instrument indicated an earthquake occurring in Longji, 1,000 kilometers away from the location of the earthquake detector. It was the first time, in fact, that we know of that mankind had detected an earthquake. Modern seismographs, the ones we use today and you're probably familiar with, only began development in 1848 in Europe.
I have something to add. I've actually seen the device in Asia, Mekki, and it had. It's, if you don't know what it looks like, it's a round. It's a tall vessel, and the one I saw wasn't metal; it was ceramic, and it had a bunch of dragons' heads pointing out in about 8 directions from it, about halfway down, and each one had a small ball in its mouth.
Wow.
And the ball would drop into a container in front of it or just below the mouth of the dragon. And you could tell which direction it came from by the way that the S&P waves hit the detector. Makes total sense that you should be able to tell, and the order in which they fell. So, thinking about it, just how complex that is. But also, Mac, you have to say that in China, they'd been recording the quakes for a much earlier, a long time before we got into recording them.
Yes.
And so we needed word of mouth, we needed people on the ground. They didn't. They had a couple of these machines around, usually in the emperor's palaces, and they could pinpoint where it was. They could triangulate back to where the origin was. So extraordinary. And the historical nature of quakes and the recording of them is highly prized. It's something that has happened, and our record books today use their records, use the Chinese records that predate our written history. So, it's real, it's happening, and that's just the way it is. I'm so sorry. High horse. The rocket. I've seen a few docos on this one. This is really cool. 228. I don't know why I can't read numbers today. It's the heat. 228 AD. China is hometown of rockets. Ancient Chinese inventors created rockets by applying counterforce produced by ignited gunpowder. Remember, every force has an opposite equal force. So if you push stuff out one end of a tube, the tube will go in the opposite direction. Okay, that's what that means. According to history, in 228 AD, the Wei state already used torches attached to arrows to guard Shenkang against the invading troops of the Shu state. Later, the Song dynasty, 1960 to 1279, had adapted gunpowder to make rockets. A paper tube stuffed with gunpowder was attached to an arrow, which can be launched by a bow, just to get it off the ground. This kind of ancient rockets had improved. Ones were widely used in military and entertainment activities in China. Of course, remember, they started with fireworks and were already using mortars to propel their fireworks into the air. But I've seen, Mekki, in a documentary where they said that they were attacking ships, ship to ship, using rockets.
Yeah, absolutely. If only the Chinese had, put it in their mind to conquer the world, we'd be eating rice now, as you intimated earlier. We'd be eating a lot more rice. But the Chinese just think differently. And nobody thinks like us in the West, the Europeans. I don't know why that is. Bronze, 1700 BC. 1700 BC, so we're going back 4,000 years here. The skill to produce bronze was mastered by ancient Chinese about 1700 BC. The Shang dynasty, which ran its course from 1600 to 1000 BC, and the Zhou dynasties from 1000 to 256 BC, brought China into the Bronze Age, and the making of bronze wares reached its peak in this period. Bronze was mainly used to make weapons, bronze tools, and ritual vessels at that time. And compared to counterparts, though, in other regions of the world, the Chinese bronze wares stand out for the inscriptions and delicate decorative patterns.
Extraordinary. The kite, about 3,000 years ago. The kite was developed around 3,000 years ago by ancient Chinese. The earliest kites were made of wood, called muyan. Wooden kite, it means. In early times, kites were mainly used for military purposes, such as sending a message, measuring distances, testing the wind, and signaling. Over time, kite flying developed into playthings, and kite flying is now enjoyed worldwide.
It's another interesting military. See, it's always the military and warcraft or warfare that advances our technology. And that includes the kite.
Drones.
And believe it or not, also the yo-yo. Yeah, many people don't know this, but the
That was
yo-yo
a
is
weapon.
actually, it's a weapon of Filipino origin, in fact. Next is the seed drill. The seed drill that goes to back about 3,500 years ago. The seed drill is a device that plants the seed into soil at a uniform depth and covers it. So it's a machine. Without this device, farmers had to plant, farmers had to plant by hand without this device, the resulting waste and uneven growth would be monumental. According to records, the Chinese using this seed drill can be dated back to the 2nd century BC, so more than 2,000 years. The device made farmers' jobs easier and highly improved the agricultural output in China. Again, agriculture. Now, of course, once you have it, you will improve on it, and that's all goodness. Now, but how did we get to agriculture in the first place? That's still the big mystery as far as I'm concerned.
Well, there's more about it than just the seed drill. There's row crop farming. Now, today we don't think anything more about it. It just makes sense to grow things in a row, doesn't it? When it never used to.
It does.
All right. So at some point, someone invented it. And I'm going to say the 6th century BC. In other parts of the world, farmers still scattered seed onto the fields randomly, while ancient Chinese started planting crops in rows. From the 6th century BC, they planted individual seeds in rows, thus reducing seed loss and making crops grow faster and stronger. This technology was not used in the Western world until about 2,200 years later.
Yeah, Johnny come lately.
Just call me Blister. I turn up after the work's done.
Exactly right. The next one might seem a little mundane. It's actually the toothbrush. I mean, where did it come from? Apparently, it was invented some 500 years ago in China, and they made these toothbrushes with coarse horse hairs attached to bone or bamboo handles. It was later brought to the New World, or Europe, in fact, by the Europeans.
Wow.
Europeans brought across, yeah.
Well, Mackie, our huge show, Fiat Currency and Reserve Fractional Lending.
Yes.
Do you know what? Paper money, fiat currency, paper money. This is the transition from having shells or gold or something that itself was valuable. You don't think today that shells are valuable. They were, because really good looking ones had more value, or the types of shells. Paper money were first developed by the ancient Chinese, who started using folding money at the end of the 8th or the beginning of the 9th century AD. Paper bills were originally used as privately issued bills of credit or exchange notes. Wow, like credit default swaps, CDFs. A merchant could deposit his cash in the capital, receiving a paper exchange certificate, which he could exchange for metal coins in other cities. That's fiat currency right there, Mackie.
That's right. That's exactly what it is. Which brings us to the next section of our discourse, which is the oddities with relation to China. So things that are lost in time, things that aren't clearly identifiable, or have not got a lot of concrete proof. We're not going to share those with you today. It's not enough time for that. But let's do a quick recap here, right? Let's just do a very quick recap. And in fact, next week will be the last show on this topic, because we only have 5 pages left.
200 pages.
200 pages. No, it's only 5, guys. Only 5 pages. But let's have a quick recap. So, and then we have maybe a larger explanation at the end of next show. I think it should become clear by now that there are many things in the world that can't be explained properly by what we've been taught in school. The evolutionary view of history that we have been taught in history in school, in fact, or at university level, is wrong. We didn't start from scratch and then consistently moved up in the West, and now in the West we're the pinnacle. It should be clear to everybody here that discoveries were made thousands of years ago. People have been using things for thousands of years, before they ever made it to Europe. People should also be aware that civilization have disappeared completely, in fact, and we don't know where they went. So they reached a fairly high pinnacle in their development, and then they simply disappeared, which flies right in the face of this evolutionary upward trending view of civilization. It is much more cyclical, meaning that yes, sure, there's development and there's progress, but equally there's decline and catastrophe, which civilizations and cultures and so forth have to face. We find these cities in the jungle. We find these the marks that people have left on the earth, but we can only see it from space, for crying out loud. From space we can see it, right? From the air. Guys, we haven't even scratched the surface of what we have lost. We are truly a species with amnesia. We are the original phoenix, right? Woof, off we go and smoke, and poof, we remember nothing of what went before. We've got fragments of information. And it is the cultural bigotry and arrogance, I want to say, not just of the West, everyone that stops us. Yeah, everyone that stops us from realizing this. Right? We're all the same. People are all the same. I mean, no, we're the best. Oh no, we're the best. Oh no, you don't know anything. Let me tell you about cricket. And it is horrendous what we've done in the name of God, of gods, of progress, of the empire. We have destroyed millions of books. We've destroyed ancient sites. We have destroyed knowledge. We don't even know what happened in South America is beyond belief. What happened in Africa and large parts of Asia as well. Even within Europe itself, the destruction of the Library of Alexandria, the destruction of the libraries of the Cathars, the Freemasons, following on from the Crusaders and so forth.
What about the request to burn all the books in Germany, Mackie?
Yeah, exactly.
Did you know?
Exactly.
I want everyone to know that Germany was like the height of sophistication, art, and knowledge.
That's right.
That
is correct.
And gone. You have a look at the Rome burnt. Lots of knowledge gone. So we don't know what we've lost. And that's one of the things. And I think at some point, Mackie, I hope you agree, at some point we lost our instruction manual.
That's right. We did.
On humans. We don't know. I bet there was one. I honestly do. I'm under the impression that there must have been, just like in the TV show, Mackie, America's Greatest Superhero. He lost the instruction to the suit. I think we had one. I think humans had an instruction manual. And, we're sidetracked and diverted and everything is taken away from who we should really be. Yeah. And this civilization that we live in just, let's say, and I'm being nice, exploits humans to make money. That's all it is. You think, we love the little gadgets. We love, the big screen TVs. We like our football. And, if some people don't anymore like the Anthony Mundine and Green fight because it was terrible. Yeah.
Was it?
It was awful. Absolutely. I've seen better scraps, and someone said at the local pub they've seen better fights. And that was televised, and it was hideously expensive. Anyway, that's moving away from that. The thing is, Mackie said before, amnesia. We don't know what we don't know. We've lost so much knowledge over the history of this time around. And it's these little ingots of knowledge that we're finding in the ancient texts that cannot be ignored. That's why this show cycle has been put together.
That's correct. The school doesn't teach you any of this. If you've got an interest, you have to educate yourself. The material is there. I mean, if you can read Sanskrit, good for you. I can't. Still on my to-do list. But I rely on the translations of others, and similar with the cuneiform scripts. We've made available to you guys the actual original translations, as well as the original images of the cuneiform tablets. educate yourself. I mean, look through the show notes; all the links are there. And it's fascinating stuff. But we are deliberately steered away from that. I mean, our civilization today, the society we live in, is geared completely away from this kind of discovery, from this kind of journey that you need to take. It's about consumption. It's about consumption. That's why I said earlier, when we came back from the break, your life is more than going to work, paying bills, and dying. There's more to your life than that.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you for the next show 257. Don't forget, comments below. And watch our other shows in the show cycles. Take care, everyone. Oh, and there's a round table coming up with Jer Bear. You should get into that. Thank you.